Hola, ¿cómo estás? How's it going? My name is Wes. Welcome to the 6th lesson already of this online Spanish course. Today we will look at the definite articles in Spanish, and this is another purple grammar lesson. Alright, so today's lesson is going to be a bit more technical, maybe a bit more boring than other lessons, but it is very, very, very important that you pay attention in this lesson. Because in this lesson, I'm going to explain something which is very important to understand about the Spanish language, which is different than how we do things in the English language. So grab your notebook, grab your pen, grab your whatever you need to take your notes, and let's get into this lesson. All right, so let's move on to a word that I want to show you, which is the car in English. So in English, if we refer to a noun, which is a thing or an object, such as the car, then we use the or the to refer to it. So we say the car. And if you look at the Spanish translation for the car, we say el coche. El coche. So you see that we use el to say the. However, if we then move on to the next word, which is the house, again, we use the to refer to the house. So house here is called a noun, and I don't really like to use too many grammatical terms, but pretty much if we refer to an object or a thing, so we refer to the house right now, then we use the to talk about house. So the house. So then if I tell you that house in Spanish is casa, then it would make sense that if you would want to say the house, you would say el casa, because in the previous example, we saw that coche, which means car, if you want to say the car, you say el coche. However, if we say the house, we say la casa. So we don't use el, but we use la. And this is perhaps a bit confusing because there are apparently two ways of saying the. And this is exactly what this lesson is all about, because in the Spanish language, all of the nouns, aka things or objects, should either be addressed with el or la. And the difference between whether you use el or la depends on if the noun that you're talking about, so the object or the thing, is a masculine or a feminine thing or object. And if you've never heard of this, this can be really confusing right from the start. I remember when I first found out that in Spanish they refer to nouns either as masculine or feminine, and I was super confused. But luckily for us, there are a few tips and tricks that we can use to figure out if a noun is masculine or feminine. So in the next couple minutes, I want to talk about those tips and tricks. So the thing you might ask yourself now is, okay, if there is two different ways of saying the, and one is masculine and the other one is feminine, then how do I know if I should use el or la? And to be honest, there is actually no clear rule of when to use el and when to use la. However, with some things it's very obvious if we should use el or la. For example, el hombre, the man.
El hombre. El hombre.
Because the man is a masculine noun, because we're talking about a masculine guy or man. So we say el hombre, so we use el anytime we speak about something masculine. Or, for example, the boy, el niño.
El niño. El niño.
And if we talk about something feminine, such as the woman, we say la mujer.
La mujer. La mujer.
Or la niña, the girl.
La niña. La niña.
So anytime we talk about something masculine, we use el, and anytime we talk about something feminine, we use la. But now if you look at this word, la cama, the bed, then if I would not have shown you that it's la cama, then you might have guessed that it is el cama, because how are you supposed to know if a bed is masculine or feminine? Because if you say the woman, then you know that you use la because you're talking about a woman. If you say el hombre, then you know to use el because you're talking about a man. So it's pretty obvious. But in this case, it's not very clear what to use. And in this example, there's also not really a way of knowing if we should have used la or el, because it doesn't really state that this thing is masculine or feminine. It's not obvious. And this is a big problem because most Spanish speakers, because they have been speaking Spanish their whole lives, they know by heart whether to use el or la. But for us non-native speakers that are learning the language, we have no idea whether to use el or la. And this is pretty annoying and also pretty difficult, because even if I would have studied Spanish for 10 years, I would probably still be making mistakes with el and la every now and then. Now, there are luckily some rules that we can apply to guess whether we use el or la. And I want to start by giving you these two rules, which are quite helpful. So, the first rule is that nouns ending in o are usually masculine. So,
El mundo. El vaso. El colegio.
so every time you see an o at the end of a noun, usually that is a masculine noun, and so we use el. And then nouns that end in a are usually feminine. So,
La mesa. La chaqueta. La vaca.
now this is a general rule and it does not apply to all of the nouns. There are actually a lot of exceptions to this rule, and there are also a lot of words that end with the letter E. And for the letter E, there is actually not really a clear rule to use to kind of guess if a noun is masculine or feminine. So as you can see, this is a very difficult topic to wrap our heads around, but at least we have some kind of guidelines to guess whether something is masculine or feminine. So let's practice with these two rules. So if we say the dog, do we say el perro or do we say la perro? Alright, so the dog is
El perro. El perro.
Then let's try another one. So if we say the chair, do we say el silla or la silla? And of course we say la silla because silla ends with an A, so we use la.
La silla. La silla.
Alright, so let's practice a bit more. Here are 5 nouns, and what I want you to do is by using these rules that we just learned, I want you to write whether we use el or la for each noun. I suggest pausing the video here and then pressing play again once you're ready. Alright, so here are the answers. Hopefully you got them right, otherwise maybe you want to start from the beginning of this video just to make sure that you get the rules right. And let's try one last one, which is the water. So is this el agua or la agua? Aha, it's el agua. It's not la agua. I'm sorry, I had to trick you because, again, these rules don't apply to all of the nouns. So agua is el agua, so it's a masculine word.
El agua. El agua.
So that's the two main rules that you can use to know whether a noun is masculine or feminine. But there's actually 2 more rules that we can use to correctly guess if a noun is either masculine or feminine. And so the third rule that we can use is that nouns ending in MA are usually masculine. So
El programa. El problema. El sistema.
And the fourth rule is that nouns ending in ion are usually feminine. So
La dirección. La educación. La situación.
and then again we can practice with these rules. So is it el tema or la tema?
El tema. El tema.
Alright, and then is it el comunicación or la comunicación?
La comunicación. La comunicación.
Alright, so those are el and la. Now we know, or we kind of know, when to use el and when to use la to say the. Again, it's very annoying that there's not just one word for this. I'm not sure why they came up with this idea of including 2 different ways of saying the, but that's just something we have to deal with while learning this language. Now, this is actually not it for this lesson. There is actually 2 more words that I want you to learn, which is los and las. And now I know what you're thinking. Why in the world do we have 2 more words that I have to learn? And to be honest, I have no idea, but don't worry, these 2 are actually pretty simple to understand. So let's look at these 2 quickly before we end this lesson. All right, so as we saw earlier, we saw that the turns into either el or la, depending on whether the noun is masculine or feminine. But what I did not talk about yet is that this is actually only the case when the noun is singular, meaning that we are only talking about one thing or object. So el coche is the car and not the cars. So it's just one singular car. And la casa is just one house. So if we start talking about multiple objects or things, then el and la actually turn or change into los and las. So el coche, one car, the car, becomes los coches, because now we are talking about multiple cars.
Los coches. Los coches.
So in English, nothing changes. We still say the. However, in Spanish, el suddenly becomes los. And la casa, the house, just one house, becomes las casas as soon as we make it plural.
Las casas. Las casas.
And another thing that you might have noticed is that just like in English, we add an S to the end of the noun to make it plural. So coche becomes coches, and casa becomes casas to make it plural. And plural, if you don't know what plural means, it pretty much means that there's two or more of an object or something. So plural is a multiple of something, and single or singular is just one thing. All right, so let me show you some more examples. So el zapato becomes los zapatos, el sombrero becomes los sombreros, la ventana becomes las ventanas, el amigo, los amigos, la amiga, las amigas. All right, and in this last slide, I kind of want to give you a sum up of all the information that we learned today. I would suggest to make a copy of this. Again, you can also just download my reference sheet. I know I keep linking to my reference sheets, but they are actually quite useful, so why not download them? And again, as I said before, as English speakers or as non-native Spanish speakers, we are not used to this idea of masculine or feminine words. So it can be very hard for us to get it right from the start. And probably we're going to make a lot of mistakes in the beginning. But this is not something to get discouraged by. Eventually along the way, you will start to recognize words and you will know whether to use el, la, los, las, or whatever. Anyways, that's it for this lesson. I hope that this was helpful to you. I hope that I explained myself well. If you have any questions, let me know. And as always, I would like to see you in the next lesson. Hasta la próxima.